So let me set this up. So for the listeners who aren't aware of the 2020 summits, in 2005, all the stakeholders in optometry, led by the AOA, got together and they sent representatives to this big brainstorming series of events, actually. And I can't remember if it was 3 or 4, Dori, but it was over the course of probably...
It was 3 or 4, one of the two.
Six-month period. I had the pleasure of being involved because of my place on the board of trustees within the AOSA, and so I got to meet a lot of you really early on, which is wonderful for me. And so the whole idea was in 2005, let's project forward about what the profession is going to be like in 2020. So they called them the 2020 summits. And so anyway, that's the setup. Dori, what was like spot on in your mind? Was there one thing that was like, man, we predicted that well?
Well, the demographics was predicted. I clearly remember, unless, because it was based upon what it is today and what we think the future is going to be, right? And about money, how ophthalmology is educated. The demographics was one thing that I remember, that they talked about the fact that there was going to be fewer and fewer ophthalmologists, and that optometry was going to have to be taken care of over this care, which was hard to imagine kind of at the time. So I remember that aspect of it, that was pretty spot on with predicting the demographics. And I just remember one of the other things was everybody was going to be speaking Mandarin.
I remember the same
Chinese.
Thing. So wrong.
Why do I remember that? But
yeah, he was wrong. Totally wrong.
Yeah, that
totally
was so wrong. Like, really? And so every time I think of that, it's like it was Spanish and Mandarin Chinese and English. But everybody was going to speak.
You know what he was?
Chinese.
So he was totally wrong about the fact that we would have to speak Mandarin Chinese in the United States in the year 2020. But what he was kind of right about, and that we're seeing, which is a whole other conversation. But the impact of China. In 2005, I mean, I never thought twice about the impact of China in the global sense, and generally, and then specifically in the United States. But maybe that was his point. More importantly, that they are going to have such an impact that we better be paying attention. I don't think it was his point. I think it's.
Do you remember anything else with that summit as far as?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think board certification was straight out of that. One of the things that we were seeing at the time was that healthcare was trying to evolve into these more of a global fee model where you're getting reimbursed for managing a disease state, as opposed to a fee for service system. Yeah. So that was one of the concerns. There was other concerns about maintenance of certification, which we couldn't participate in. That actually wound up coming pretty close to true. Within some of the MIPS things, they sort of dropped some of those things, but it was predicted that you would have to show ongoing competence, and that actually we saw that in the ACA and some of the high tech acts, and MIPS has sort of evolved. But if you remember correctly, early on in MIPS, there was a component of like educational sort of
education. Yep. That was in the early.
So anyway, I mean, that's the thing that came out of it, and that I remember that I thought, it was within like 5 or 6 years it became something that that was worthwhile. So
I know they keep talking about the pay structure for us. They've been talking about changing the pay structure for us since when I graduated from optometry school, and I just think that that's such a difficult topic, and it's such a difficult thing to do. It's just a convoluted, complicated system that it's really hard to change things like that. And then they try to give us Medicare cuts every single year, and it's formulas that were set up a long time ago. And how do you revamp?
Well, the real hard part is how do you even how do you even gauge like quality care when you could have somebody who is way underperforming based on clinical practice guidelines for a specific disease state, but yet they're a cheaper provider in the short term. Most payers can't see out past a year, 2 years, 5 years. I mean, 5 years is a long time for a payer, especially when you get to these populations that you're going to offload your population to Medicare at some finite point in the future, usually 65 or something, right? 66, 67. And so you're going to offload your care. Well, any amount of stuff that occurs when you're the private insurer, anything that occurs when a patient's 50 that might have a downstream benefit in 15 years, you don't care about that because it's not saving you any money. It's just costing you money. So how do you get to the point of like being able to judge that exact same thing? You see Chris Wolf, and Chris Wolf is really underperforming in the standard of care, but I look to a payer like I'm really cost effective because I only see that patient one time a year for a patient who's a high risk glaucoma suspect, maybe they're an ocular hypertension patient with high risk characteristics, and Dori's seeing that patient 2 to 3 times a year, and you're really watching closely, and you're going to be on top of it really quickly. You've built rapport with that patient, so if you do need to pull the trigger on treatment, it's going to be very certain, as opposed to me where I might see something that's like, well, maybe that's a little different. Let's just start treatment, right? Something like that. You can't tease that out of the data. You can't know that. You just see a cost involved. So that's a real hard part.